Welcome back to Rav Pinson's podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern man. This episode was sponsored by our podcast team, in honor of a sweet, happy, and healthy new year for all our listeners. Today's episode is a Rosh Hashanah edition Q&A, and the fourth in our Q&A series.
Our next question is, why are there 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? We utilize the same exact liturgy, meaning we're praying the same thing on this in 2 days in a row. What are we aiming to accomplish on day 1 as opposed to day 2? And vice versa.
Okay, so this again is there's an halachic, there's like a law-based understanding of this practice, why we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and then there's a more pnimius, a more inner reason for why we celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. And one is like from the perspective of the vessel, one is from the perspective of the light, from the oil and the kli, from the light in the vessel. So there's a technical reason why we celebrate 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and it's interesting that this idea of celebrating 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is not just something that's done in the diaspora, Chutz La'aretz, outside of the land of Israel, but is also in the land of Israel. And it was not only done after the times of the Beis HaMikdash, after the times of the temple, but was done even in the times of the prophets. In the book of Nehemiah, according to Rashi, it's actually they were already celebrating 2 days of Rosh Hashanah in Yerushalayim in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, in the times of the temple. So that's an old custom. And the reason for that is, very quickly, it's a complicated issue, but in very short, is that the new months, because Rosh Hashanah is the first day of the month, right? It's the first day of the 7th month. New months was not established through a calendar years back, but it was established through witnesses coming and testifying that they saw the new moon. So therefore, normally, if let's say the Yom Tov is the holidays in the 15th day of the month, let's say, or 14th day of the month, like Pesach and Sukkot and those Yom Tovs, they established the seeing of the new moon. They came to the high court, which was in Jerusalem, They came to the high court. They established that today is the first day of the month. So you know when 14 days later was exactly when it happens. Now, since Rosh Hashanah is actually the first day of the month, it's kind of complicated because on the 30th day of Elul, which is the previous month, right? So technically you could see the moon the night before, or you couldn't have seen the moon. That's the possibility. That's why we're waiting for 2 witnesses to show up. So let's say it's the 30th day of Elul, which technically can also become the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Until what time could the witnesses show up? The witnesses can technically come until the end of the day, because if they don't come to the end of the day, then automatically the next day becomes the first day of the month. You're following this, how this works? So the 30th day of the previous month could still be the 30th day of the previous month, but the 31st day will definitely be the first day of the next month. So if witnesses don't show up in this time period, in this 24-hour time period, 23 hours, then the next day will be automatically the first day of the new month. Are you following this analogy? Okay, so witnesses come in the morning, let's say the 34th day, and they come to the high court in Jerusalem, and they say, today we saw the moon last night. So they say, perfect, today's Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, they did all the services they had to do on Rosh Hashanah. There's special offerings that have to be done on Rosh Hashanah, special songs that were sang by the Levi on the day of Rosh Hashanah. So everything that was a service was done as a service of Rosh Hashanah. So you celebrated 1 day Rosh Hashanah. People that lived a journey of a few days away for 2 witnesses to come and tell them that they sanctified the new moon on that day would have to keep 2 days of Rosh Hashanah that day, because they wouldn't know which day is the first day of the month. But in Jerusalem, if the witnesses showed up in the morning, it wouldn't be a problem. What happens if the witnesses showed up 2 minutes before the day is over? Now, technically, if 2 witnesses show up 2 minutes before the day is over, and they say we saw the moon last night, this day was Rosh Hashanah, past tense, and they only have 2 minutes left. So they couldn't do the offerings. They couldn't do the Skalku, Levi, and Bashir. They couldn't sing the correct songs. But they would have to be 2 minutes of Rosh Hashanah. So this was a problem. You're following? This was a problem. So what the sages did was they said if witnesses can come till midday they cannot come after midday. Even though technically, according to Torah law, they could come until the end of the day. But because it would mess up the whole idea of how we served in the temple, they said you cannot show up at that day. So therefore, if witnesses did show up after the hours that the rabbis established, you couldn't testify for seeing the new moon. What they did was they said today will continue as the day of Rosh Hashanah, because we started already celebrating it as Rosh Hashanah, and we'll just finish it. And tomorrow will be the real Rosh Hashanah. We'll celebrate as Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah was already an idea that was many, many thousands of years back. That's the way it was practiced. Okay, that's just the exoteric, that's the technical, halachic understanding. But there's a deeper understanding. And the deeper understanding is as follows. Outside of Israel, in the diaspora, this is according to most opinions, the Ritva, whatever, according to most opinions, this is the way it works. In Israel, wherever Jews live, it's always a one-day holiday, not Rosh Hashanah, a one-day holiday of Pesach, one-day holiday of Shavuos, one-day holiday of Sukkot, always one day. Jews that live in exile, in the diaspora, it's always 2 days. So the Ari, and the Ari explains this idea in great length, and it's explained also in Darach Tzitzacha, Likutei Torah, many different places explain this is the way it works. The idea of exile means there's a separation between something. So if you say there's let's say the physical world and the spiritual world, in the place of unity, this physical and the spiritual exists simultaneously. In a place of exile, these two divide into separate states. So there becomes one type of, when you say that a Yom Tov, a day of holiday, is when there's an elevation, aliyah, there's an elevation of that day. Instead of being in a mundane day, it becomes a sacred day. So normally the physical part of the day and the spiritual part of the day are elevated in the same time. That would be the elevation of the day. But when it talks about outside of Israel, so then there is an elevation on the first day of the spiritual realm, and then on the second day there's an elevation of the physical realm. So it's divided, because the whole idea of exile is separation. It means that we're outside of the space. It's a process that takes 2 days, one for the spiritual, one for the physical. So therefore, the Ari says that with Rosh Hashanah, there's a verse that says, Ki choik li Yisrael hu mishpat l'kei Yaakov, that it's a day of choik li Yisrael, it's a day of judgment. And judgment, judgment generally refers to food, physicality. And mishpat l'kei Yaakov, there's a judgment for the God of Jacob, which represents the judgment of the spirituality. So the Ari says that the first day of Yom Tov, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, is a day where we're judged for our spirituality, which is also connected to the world of Leah, one of the matriarchs. And the second day of Yom Tov represents our judgment for all the physicality that we're going to have for the coming year, which represents the matriarch of Rachel. One was beautiful on the inside, one was beautiful on the outside. One represents the physicality, one represents the spirituality. So the spirituality is on the first day, and the physicality is on the second day. It means, which just means at a practical level, this means like this. On Rosh Hashanah, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, since we're receiving the blessings for the entire year to come up, that will unfold. On the first day of Rosh Hashanah, our meditation, our focus, and our kavanah should be, how do we receive our pnimius, our inner life? Not just spirituality. Spirituality also refers to our mental state, our emotional state, our spiritual state. Everything that's going to unfold in terms of our inner life, which will be revealed and unfolded throughout the entire year, is the kernel of that blessing we receive on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. So all the things that are relevant to our inner life, how have we relationships with our parents, with our children, with our siblings, how we have with our friends, how do we interact with people, how do we feel about ourselves, what's our mental capacity, what's our spiritual elevation, everything in the inner person's life, in the pneumius person's life, in the inner part of life, is focused on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. That's why it's Leah, the inner world, Olam HaMachshava, the world of thought. This is also, incidentally, another reason why we do only the simanim. We do these omens only in the first day of Rosh Hashanah, according to most opinions, not the second day, because Leah receives the simanim, the sign from Rachel. So Rachel doesn't have the simanim. She takes the sign when she's intimate with Yaakov. She receives the signs from her sister. So she pretends to be actually Rachel. So the first day is Leah, is spirituality, our inner world, our inner life. And the second day of Rosh Hashanah is all the blessings that we're going to receive for our physical life, for our manifest life in the physical world, for all the sustenance that we're going to have, and the parnasa, and the livelihood, and the physical life, and the physical health that we're going to have, and for our family. So everything on the physical level is received on the second day. So this is why the process takes 2 days. So the external reason is for a technical reason, but the spiritual reason is because the unfolding of this intense light that's drawn down on Rosh Hashanah is first received for our spiritual well-being on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and for our physical well-being on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And then we have to articulate them throughout the year and draw down all the blessings into our life.
So then why?
Yeah.
How do we approach this when the avodah seems to be similar, if not rather the same, the 2 days? I guess except for you were saying the omens, the simanim, we're not necessarily doing the second day, but with the davening more or less being the same, how do we approach it?
It's a good question. I would answer it. The very simple way to approach it is to actually recognize yourself in the second day. There's something about the second days of everything. If you do something for the first time, there's always excitement. The first time is always excitement. So everyone's always, it's the first time I'm going to do this. Tonight's the night of Rosh Hashanah. I feel passionate. I feel desire. I feel like really excited about the first night of Rosh Hashanah. The first night I hear the shofar, I'm really into this idea of blowing the shofar. That's the way normal people feel. There's a certain chesed, a certain desire, a certain openness and lightness and excitement when something's done the first day. When you do things the second time, there's always like, I just did this yesterday. And really, can I feel the same excitement of hearing the shofar today as I heard it yesterday? Could I really be so impassioned about the prayers that I did today as I did yesterday? But this is where the physicality of it enters. Because excitement and passion is all is part of our inner life. That's like our inner life. So that actually happens on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. The second day of Rosh Hashanah is, could you really do it physically? Could you go through the motions physically in the same way like you did it yesterday? And if you could, that means you can draw down the blessings onto the physical level. Let me give you another analogy of this. Let's say a person is falls in love with someone, and I love you, I'm going to be committed to you. Okay, excellent, beautiful. And it's the day of the wedding, and the person is really a big mensch. Okay, how about it's 10 years later? Could you still do that? If you can still do it in the physical place without actually feeling, maybe you're not feeling the same thing you felt before, and maybe your mind doesn't have the same thoughts that you had before, but you're committed into this relationship, and you're going to do it anyways, that shows that you're drawing down the blessings of the relationship, or you're concretizing the relationship in a real way. So that's what happens exactly on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. The second day of Rosh Hashanah, you shouldn't say, can I be inspired the same day, the second day, like the first day? Maybe not, but that's the point. So it says that I will not fear. I will not fear the idea of snow, of coldness, because my house is filled with doubles. This is the way it's understood. What that means is, coldness and lack of enthusiasm means I've done it already, so I'm not enthusiastic. But I'm not afraid. Why? Because I know how to do the second times. People that know how to do double, people that know how to do the second time, those are the people that really can bring it down correctly. A person wants to be very successful in this world and wants to create, let's say, music and does it like that one time. Wow, and it's amazing that time. But then the next day you have to sit and grind and make sure that the mics are in the right place and the musicians show up. I don't want to do that. I want to be enthusiastically passionate about creating music. But that is really the first day that's the inner world of the music. But if you want to be successful in life, you actually have to do the grinding. You have to do the shnai. You have to do the repetition when you're not feeling it and you're not having the same passion. So in an interesting way of thinking about it, just by zustelling, I don't know if there's a good word for this, but just by putting yourself forward on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I am present and I'm going to do this fully like I did it yesterday, even though I don't feel the same excitement, even though I don't feel the same passion, but I'm going to put myself physically in this state. That's the way you really draw down blessings physically. So that's not only that your inner life becomes satisfied and your enthusiasm and your mental state, your emotional state is it a correct state, but even your physicality becomes aligned with that. That's a deeper reason what Dari is saying, that the blessings of the physicality comes from the repetition. So doing it again is where it's really at. Could I really draw it down into the physical level?
Thank you very much, Rav.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Rav Pinson's podcast. To submit questions or to sponsor a future episode, please email ravpinsonpodcast@gmail.com. The link is in the description below. To learn more from Rav Pinson about Rosh Hashanah, you can find his book on Amazon entitled A Call to Majesty, The Mysteries of Shofar and Rosh Hashanah.